A very good evening and welcome to another episode of South Africa Today and Beyond. This evening we're coming to you on location at Constitutional Hill, a heritage site in South Africa. And this evening on the show we're joined by the Heritage and Education Manager, Ruben Pasha, who is based here at Cornhill. He'll be taking us through the history of this particular heritage site and some of the most significant sites in this particular place. Welcome to the show, Ruben.
Thank you for having us.
Sure. Ruben, I think maybe let's start off with the history of Constitutional Hill. I know firstly it was a fort, then converted into a prison. I think maybe take us from there.
All right. This is about 120 years old. Back then, people were so fascinated with the gold here in Johannesburg. And then to keep law and order in Johannesburg, President Paul Kruger, then at the time, built the first prison here. It's almost as old as Johannesburg itself. And with the threat of the Anglo-Boer War, with the Jameson raid, he surrounded the prison with the old rampart wall that you see around us and turning it into a military fort. He built a couple of these forts across the country to sort of strengthen his military defense.
Sure.
Yeah, so you will see inside here, there is an old coat of arms that is supposed to be on the outside of the building, but it's disguised away from the building. And then when you are outside, you only see some heap of land. You don't even know what was happening here. But actually, this was the most gruesome prison that ever existed. Later, I'll show you inside and tell you about what type of prisoners used to be in here. And a quick example that comes to mind is Joe Slovo, who was also arrested here.
Now, Ruben, the transition from the fort and then it then became a prison. When did that happen?
So the prison was built first in 1892, right? And around 1806, that's when there was a threat of an Anglo-Boer War. So you had a group of the Jameson raid who were threatening to overthrow the government. And that is when Paul Kruger decided to turn this into a military fort.
When you come through the entrance here, there's specific areas, you can see the holes as you enter the fort. What is the significance of those particular holes there?
Okay, so if you have a military fort, you want to hold out the enemy for as long as possible.
Sure.
So you can see there are two doors. So the enemy will first have to break the first door, and then before they could break the second door, you have these slits in between the walls. So there will be rifles aiming at the enemy, slowing the enemy down. So the whole aim of the holes was to use to slow the enemy down. But of course that didn't happen. And after the Anglo-Boer War was passed in 1900s, early 1900s, they then decided to turn back the old fort back into the prison. But now you had this prison that was so perfectly secure because of the old fort structure. And then the prison warders used the slits to intimidate new prisoners coming in. This used to be the main entrance of the prison. So when you're coming in as prisoners, you'll be dropped here by Okwela vans. They'll just leave you in the dark, and then the only light you see is coming through the slits. And when you try to follow the lights, you see rifles aiming at you. A lot of prisoners pissed their pants because they thought they are going to die. This is where they're going to die. But then this was a whole part of intimidation, trying to get you scared and under their control. They tell you to strip, they separate you according to race and gender, and then the males will go to this prison, but only the white males. And then the black males will go to section 4 that we'll see later, and the women will go to the women's jail. So this whole entrance was a first part of humiliation and to really interrogate.
I mean, historically, has this prison always, and in terms of, I'm talking about the apartheid era time, has it always been two demarcations in terms of the male and female part?
It has always been like that. They were never mixed. So the old fort prison, which is this structure here, was the one that was built first, right? And they couldn't mix the white male prisoners and the black male prisoners as well. So they had to build number 4 later. That's where they kept all, they used to call them non-whites or non-Europeans. So everybody who was not white. So if you were Indian at the time, or what you used to call colored or black, they would all keep them in number 4. So the only black man to be kept here was Nelson Mandela.
Sure, and I know Mandela's prison is quite close from where we are now.
Yeah.
Maybe let's start off there, and before we proceed to the other side where black prisoners were kept, let's proceed to Mandela's cell, and then we can just go through some of the historic and I think items that are there in the prison itself.
So this was the prisoner's exercise yard, but this actual one was called Joslovo Chambers because it had a toilet over there. And Joslovo was a legal practitioner, so all the prisoners who wanted legal assistance.
So Ruben, we're now in the famous Mandela cell. Maybe take us through the different, I mean, we're seeing different notes, pieces of writings, the brown boxes. What are some of these elements that we're seeing in the prison cell?
Okay, so here you'll find letters that Nelson Mandela wrote while he was in prison. Some of these letters he was writing to his family, some to his comrades. And you'll see some diaries over there. He was writing his personal notes, his personal thoughts about actually, he has a very beautiful handwriting if you take a closer look. The reason why we still have the letters is because the authorities, prison authorities at the time, they kept these letters and they made sure they didn't reach their destination. And they just wanted to keep a close watch on everything he communicates. Because of that, they didn't know that they were keeping history for us nicely and preserved. So today we have these letters for people to see.
The irony of it. But I mean, Ruben, I could just imagine the process that's involved in terms of gathering the documents, in terms of turning in this into a heritage site and preserving the kind of history that's here today. The boxes that are here, and I'm assuming they come from different areas where Mandela was arrested, where he was kept.
Yeah.
So what kind of process went into collecting this sort of documentation and finally preserving it into the space?
I think it's just a matter of collaborating with the right people. For instance, you can hear an audio in the background of Nelson Mandela's time in Robben Island, so we had to get that from the Robben Island Museum. But Mandela's family, as well as the Nelson Mandela Foundation, helped a lot. And this was donated at the time Nelson Mandela was still alive, so he saw the exhibition and he also okayed some of the material that is in here.
Is there any other material that's sort of hidden away? There's always that sort of sacred piece of document. Is there somewhere, somehow that's kept away from, I think, the public?
Or else, why would we have museums? Like, the only piece of information that is here is what is here.
Okay.
Like, there's nothing that we kept away from the public. And then if someone has it, please, I urge them to share it.
They must turn it over.
Exactly, because we want future generations to know about Mandela and then to also get into his mind and see what kind of a man he was. And you can see it when you read some of his words.
And how popular is this particular site when people come and visit Cornhill as a heritage site? How popular is this particular cell?
Well, it is very much popular because of Mandela. So immediately when people hear that Nelson Mandela was kept here, and so they want to see it. It's both Mandela and Gandhi.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming there'd be different interactions with the history for South Africans and people of, internationals. How's the response from, South Africans, but also people from other countries in terms of interacting with this particular exhibition?
Okay, the response, like you get different people. Some are school-going kids, some are internationals. Internationals are often excited about Nelson Mandela. They've done their little more research about Mandela even before they came here. So for them, they spend a lot more time in here. For locals, it's just a little bit different experience. So they're more familiar with Nelson Mandela, so they don't really spend as much time, but then you could see they're emotional about his stay. Some just most people only thought that Mandela was kept in Robben Island.
Yes, that's,
but
yeah.
then they get shocked to discover that he was just in their bed. Yeah.
And how long was Mandela kept in this particular cell when he was here?
So he was kept here on 3 occasions. So he spent a couple of months, but it was just not at the same time. So he was arrested 3 times. And Mandela had a history with the site. Besides being arrested here, he came here to represent the women that were arrested in the women's jail, and part of them was his wife, Winnie Mandela at the time. And also he came here to sign the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, that is also in that class that you'll see over there. He came here when the court was inaugurated. So he had a long history with the site.
Absolutely, and I mean, marking 20 years of the South African Constitution, being Constitution Hill, also the home of the Constitutional Court here, and I mean, you talk about how, Mandela signed off as well the Constitution here and the Bill of Rights. I think that's quite significant for the history of this country. I think anybody who's really watching this particular show ought to come here and really take in and absorb all the history that's here.
What's more fascinating is how you turn a place that used to violate human rights and make it a home for the Constitution that promotes human rights.
As you're saying, the irony of people that kept things the way would, actually they preserved history for us. Yeah. But Ruben, I mean, let's then, go for a quick ad break. When we do come back, I want us to then shift from this particular space where Mandela was the only black man kept in this particular area and see the other conditions where the black prisoners were kept. Welcome back from the ad break, and in this particular segment we're going to be going to the notorious number 4 prison where the majority of the black prisoners were kept, and only Mandela of course was kept in the part that we just saw before the ad break. So let's just go that side, Ruben, you can take us through that space. Ruben, this is the notorious number 4 prison, and like we said earlier, this is where a large number of the black people were kept. I mean, we're seeing the different plates, the different meal, the dietary requirements for Africans, non-whites, as you put it earlier. Maybe take us through all of that.
Okay. Yeah, so this was overcrowded prison. It kept people like your Robert Sobukwe. You had both political and non-political prisoners, but you also had common law prisoners. This is where the prison gang started, like your Nongolozo Mnyama, who started there 26 and 28 and whatnot. So it will be a normal day in prison. They'll sleep and then wake up in the morning and come and line up here to collect their food. This was a food area. And then the sizes of the plates here just is a demonstration of the actual type of plates that we used to have in terms of size and in terms of steel. I think they still use the same measurement in prisons today. And then on the boards here, you'll see some dietary requirements. Food was prepared in the old Fort prison, that side in the kitchen, and was brought here through those 3 food drums that you see. And then we call them Congress 1, 2, and 3. Congress 1 was just for the white people. Congress 2 was for the colors and the Asians. Congress 3 was for only the blacks. And what you find in Congress 1 is all the nice stuff. And if you see the board behind me here, you can see the whites had all this nice food to eat, and then whatever was cut out from that, they would give it to the colors and Asians, and then Africans would get very little meat, no bread at all, and they gave them puza mandla. Do you know what puza mandla is?
I've heard of it before.
Yeah, so they gave them puza mandla a little bit more because they also used the prisoners as cheap labor. They wanted the prisoners to be fit so they can go out and work as slaves, and then when they come back, they'll be subjected to a strip search called Tauza.
The Tauza, I've heard about it. It's very quite graphic.
Yeah.
I wanted to go to there's another area here. It's quite, dehumanizing again as well. I think it's far more worse than I think the kind of food situation that was here. And if those viewers are quite sensitive, when you do explain what happened that particular side, people should just take note of the fact that the description of it is quite sensitive, but I think it's necessary to tell the story of this particular country and how black people were treated in prisons like the Old Fort or what is now today Constitutional Hill. Yeah. So let's go to that particular side and let's see what's happening that side.
All right.
Ruben, there are these two particular structures, and I know earlier when we started, you said, besides the Constitutional Hill being home to the old fort, the old prison, but it's also home to the Constitutional Court. Now, behind me is the Constitutional Court, but also there are these two particular structures that sort of are leaning towards the Concord. Maybe explain to us the significance of these two structures.
Okay, so in 1995, the justices of the Concord took a historic decision to locate the court in Braamfontein on the site of an old prison. But in here, they also found the awaiting trial block, which was the biggest prison that existed here on site. It kept the awaiting trial prisoners of 1956. We had to make a very difficult decision of sacrificing the awaiting trial prison, and it was demolished and its bricks were carefully preserved to build the constitutional court that you see behind you. And what remained is all these 4 staircases. For now you can see the 2 staircases with glass on top. At night there's a light that it's shown up, which simply represent what could emerge from the difficulties of the past, the possibilities of the future. The court itself, towards the back, has 2 of these staircases buried inside it, and then the facade of the court inside has the bricks of the awaiting trial block. They are not joined in together, they are meant to breathe. So the symbolism here is the bricks that used to violate human rights, now these are bricks that promote and protect human rights.
Sure, and there's this particular flame here. What does this represent?
So this is a flame of democracy, and every visitor is encouraged to end their tour here and get hope. This flame was lit by former President Nelson Mandela from his house in Tulu, and then it traveled here to Constitution Hill, and it was lit by former President Kgalema Motlanthe. Below the flame you see is the preamble of the Constitution, and it's quite an amazing symbol.
Now explain to us what this particular area is about. I mean, from the feeding area there, sort of where you collect the food, where they collected the food, and to this particular area, what is this all about?
Okay, so you collect your food and you come this side. You are all forced to eat facing the long drops toilet. So everybody would have their plate of food, and then they'll force you to squat, and then you have to squat and eat looking at the long drops. Remember, as an African prisoner, male prisoner, you are given puzamandla, which looks brown, and if any one of the prisoners get an urge to relieve themselves, you are forced to watch them, and then if you don't obey, they will punish you and then throw you into the isolation cell.
And how, I mean, let's talk about the hygienic situation in these prisons. It's overcrowded. How long do you get, I mean, to stretch, number one, get your food, eat your food, but also, I mean, we're reading about, typhoid breakouts in this particular prison. How was the hygiene situation in the prisons?
It was very bad, and that's what led to the prison to close in 1983 because of the severe and hygienic situation here. There was overcrowding first year, and then remember I told you about the prison bosses. So they were prison bosses. You are in the cells 23 hours. You're given an hour to come out and stretch. Also use the shower that you see down there. But the prison bosses would hack the shower. So as a result, a lot of prisoners didn't shower. And then there were a lot of diseases that broke out.
I know there were some disciplinary measures that took place in this particular prison if prisons didn't obey what the warders told them to. Let's go to that area there, and then from there I think we'll then go to the Concord.
Yeah.
So let's go to the area and just see what kind of disciplinary measures were used on the prisoners. So, I mean, even like we were saying before, the prison authorities use different means to enforce, I think, one, the sense of power and authority to the prisoners and inflict sort of different kinds of pain. We're seeing kind of nopkiris, different forms of weapons that are in this particular area. But of course, there's a more famous one. I mean, maybe take us through what that is all about.
Okay, so if you contravene prison rules in here, they would punish you and throw you into isolation cells. But they will use this flogging frame that you see behind us and then use any of these instruments to administer the punishment.
But how do you decide? Do they decide based on the degree of like this, the transgression, or what is it?
It's how they feel. So if they feel like they need to administer heavier punishment on you, they'll pick each and every one of them. So we've decided in this room to put an exhibit about the types of punishment that they were administered. And then we also put a recording onto the wall of the experiences of prisoners talking about how they were punished. So you're welcome to take a look at the type of instruments that were used, especially the
So Ruben, I mean, it's 2017. This marks 20 years of the South African Constitution. This particular flame has been burning since 2011 when it traveled from Qunu here, from President Nelson Mandela's house. But I mean, for somebody that works at a site like this, which has now been declared a national heritage site, for somebody that works on the heritage of this country, what do you take every single day? I mean, it's rich with history. The Constitutional Court, the history of this country, the sufferings of our people as well. What do you take from this particular experience, working every single day in this particular space?
Look, it's a knowledge that the young people today who are so ignorant about history, when you see how informed they are when they leave this place, how encouraged they are to be active citizens, that is fulfilling.
I can imagine. But I mean, also just reading the preamble to the South African Constitution, 20 years of the Constitution. I mean, when you look back 20 years, nobody ever thought would come to this particular place. And that must be a bit nostalgic for somebody like you, working every single day. You're seeing, I mean, records of literally where this country comes from. You can feel the history as well.
I mean, that's what motivates you to keep coming to work, because you see more people who are just becoming more inspired. And then I would encourage everyone, I think every South African should come and visit Constitution Hill, not only to learn about this history, but also to come and visit the court. I mean, this is the most beautiful court you'll find. It's not intimidating, it has artworks, it is transparent, everybody can come and visit the court.
Ruben, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show, our season finale. Thank you so much for opening your time, giving us your time, but also opening the court for us, the Concord to us, opening the museum as well as, the entire space for us. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for featuring us.
Sure. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for you on the final episode of Season 2 of South Africa Today and Beyond. Stay tuned and we hope to see you again soon.